I got pregnant, but my boyfriend told me he has a vasectomy and broke up with me. It's not fair. If I had known, I would have taken precautions. His lack of communication destroyed this relation. Liam and I had what I truly believed was a transparent, mature, and deeply committed relationship for the last year. We spent nearly every weekend together, shared our dreams for the future, and I genuinely felt we were in that perfect phase where nothing could touch us. He always acted like the ultimate partner, the kind of man who values honesty above everything else, or so he claimed during our long late-night talks. I trusted him implicitly with my heart and my life, never imagining that he was holding back a massive part of who he was. We never had those awkward conversations about birth control in a formal way because it just felt like we were on the same page about everything. I assumed we were building a foundation of total trust, but looking back I realized I was the only one actually being an open book. Things took a sharp turn for the surreal when I realized my period was over a week late and a strange intuition told me to stop at the pharmacy. I went into the bathroom expecting a negative result just to ease my mind, but instead, I saw those two unmistakable pink lines staring back at me. My heart was pounding, a mix of sheer terror and a strange budding excitement, because I thought this was the start of our next chapter together. I took a deep breath, snapped a clear photo of the test, and sent it to Liam with a message about how we needed to talk and figure this out. I waited by my phone, expecting a call or at least a supportive text saying we were in this together. I was ready to be vulnerable and scared with him, but what I got instead was a silence that felt like a physical blow to the chest. Seconds later, I heard that soul-crushing ding of a notification, but it wasn't the kind I expected. It was the sound of a WhatsApp block. I stared at my screen in disbelief as his profile picture vanished into a gray silhouette, leaving me completely stranded in my own living room. His final message, sent right before he severed our connection, read, "I had a vasectomy 3 years ago. Don't contact me again." I am absolutely reeling and can barely breathe as I try to process the level of coldness it takes to send a text like that and then disappear. How could he keep such a massive medical secret from me for an entire year while pretending to be my partner? It is a complete breach of the honesty he supposedly valued so much, and now I'm left to deal with the fallout of his silence. If I had known he was sterile, I would have been much more careful with my own body and choices because that information changes the entire dynamic of a relationship. He essentially tricked me into a false sense of security by letting me believe he was a standard functioning man. And now he's acting like I'm the villain. It's incredibly selfish of him to drop a bomb like that and then hide behind a block button instead of having a real conversation. His omission of such a vital health fact is the real issue here. Yet, he's treating me like I've committed some sort of crime just for being pregnant. I feel like my entire world has been pulled out from under me because he chose to keep a secret that had real-world consequences for both of us. He was the one who failed to communicate, but somehow I'm the one left holding the bag while he plays the victim of circumstance. The more I think about it, the angrier I get that he didn't have the decency to mention his condition during any of our many conversations about the future. A relationship cannot survive on half-truths, and him withholding his vasectomy is a massive red flag that I unfortunately missed because I'm a trusting person. It's not just about the pregnancy. It's about the fact that he felt entitled to keep his medical history private while I was being completely open with him. He led me to believe one thing while the reality was entirely different, which is a form of manipulation no matter how he tries to spin it. I'm currently sitting in my apartment surrounded by the things we bought together, feeling like I never even knew the man I was sleeping next to. The lack of respect he showed by blocking me is just the icing on the cake of his overall cowardice. I keep rereading that last text, trying to find a shred of the Liam I thought I knew, but all I see is a man who is looking for an excuse to run. To use a medical procedure as a weapon to end a relationship is so incredibly low, especially when he's the one who kept it hidden in the first place. He's essentially blaming me for a situation that wouldn't even be an issue if he had been a man and told me the truth months ago. I'm the one whose life is being turned upside down, yet he's the one acting offended and wronged by the news of a child. It's a total reversal of reality, and I refuse to let him make me feel like I'm the one who did something wrong, when he's the one who lied by omission. My feelings of betrayal are so deep that I can't even focus on what to do next, only on the injustice of his behavior. The audacity of him to think he can just walk away from a year-long relationship over a text message is something I can't even wrap my head around. We had plans, we had a life, and he threw it all away because he didn't want to deal with the consequences of his own lack of transparency. I deserve an explanation, a real talk, and a partner who doesn't vanish the moment things get complicated or unexpected. I've always been the kind of person who faces problems head on, so seeing him cower behind a block notification is honestly pathetic. He's trying to rewrite the narrative to make it seem like I'm the untrustworthy one, but the facts speak for themselves. He's the one with the secret. I'm just a woman who thought she was in a safe, honest relationship. And now I'm paying the price for his deception. It's just so incredibly unfair that he gets to go on with his life while I'm stuck here dealing with a pregnancy and a broken heart simultaneously. If he had just told me the truth on day one, we could have discussed what that meant for us and what precautions I needed to take for my own peace of mind. Instead, he let me live in a fantasy world where everything was fine, only to shatter it the second he felt threatened by reality. I feel like I've been living a lie for the last 12 months, and it's all because he was too afraid to be honest about his own body. Every time I look at the pregnancy test, I don't see a mistake. I see the result of a relationship that was built on his foundation of secrets. He thinks he's so clever with his "I have a vasectomy" line, but all it proves is that he's a liar who doesn't deserve my time. I've tried calling him from different numbers, but it seems he's gone completely off the grid as far as I'm concerned, which only proves my point about his cowardice. If he were actually innocent or right in this situation, he would be able to look me in the eye and say it instead of hiding. I'm left wondering what else he lied about during our time together, because once a man hides something that big, everything else becomes a question mark. The psychological toll of this is immense, and I'm struggling to find the strength to even get through the day without bursting into tears of pure frustration. He has effectively ruined my perception of love and trust, all because he couldn't be bothered to be an adult and share his medical status. It's a level of selfishness I didn't think he was capable of, and I'm absolutely devastated by the realization that he was never the man I thought he was. Now I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to tell my family and friends that the man they all liked turned out to be a deceptive ghost. They're going to ask questions, and I'm going to have to explain that I was blindsided by a secret he kept for years. It's embarrassing and painful, and I hate that he's the one who put me in this position through his own lack of basic communication skills. He essentially trapped me in a scenario where I'm the only one facing the music, while he hides behind a medical procedure he never even mentioned. It's the ultimate gaslighting move to act like his omission is my problem, and I'm not going to let him get away with it without a fight. This relationship didn't just end, it was destroyed by his refusal to be a transparent partner, and that is a burden he should have to carry. Main story comments. Anonymous user 1 says, "Wait, let me get this straight. If he's had a vasectomy for 3 years and you're pregnant now, how is that his lack of communication? Biology doesn't care about your feelings. Who is actually the father of this baby?" Ops reply, "That's completely secondary to the main issue here. But the point is that he was shooting blanks and didn't tell me, which prevented me from planning my life and my health properly. Whether the baby is biologically his isn't the point. His lack of honesty about his body is what destroyed our trust." Anonymous user 2 says, "If I had known, I would have taken precautions." Chloe, why would you need precautions if you were supposedly only with him? You're literally admitting you were with someone else but are mad he didn't give you a heads up that you couldn't pin it on him. Ups reply, "You clearly don't understand how relationships work. Every woman has a fundamental right to know if her partner is sterile so she can manage her own health and reproductive choices accordingly. His secret was a trap, and I'm the one suffering because he chose to be a liar." Update 1. It's been 3 days since my last update, and the reality of my situation is starting to sink in with a cold, sharp bite. Liam still hasn't unblocked me on anything, which is just so typical of his avoidant personality. Now that I see him for who he really is, I realized very quickly that I couldn't afford the rent on our apartment alone, so I've had to pack up my entire life into boxes and move back into my parents' house. It was incredibly humiliating to show up at their door with my suitcases, crying my eyes out because the man I loved decided to ghost me over a medical secret. My room at their house feels like a prison of my own past, and I spend most of my time staring at the ceiling, wondering how he can sleep at night. He's out there living his life while I'm forced to regress and live with my parents like a teenager again. My mom has been a total rock during this, and honestly, she is just as furious as I am. But her anger is directed exactly where it should be, at Liam. I explained the whole situation to her, detailing how he intentionally withheld his condition to avoid any real responsibility in our relationship. She was horrified to hear that a man could be so deceptive for an entire year, especially while talking about a future together. She sees it for exactly what it is, a complete and total breach of trust that no woman should ever have to endure. It feels good to have at least one person who understands that his silence was a deliberate choice meant to keep me in the dark. We've spent hours talking about it, and she agrees that his behavior is nothing short of predatory in its lack of transparency. I've been crying constantly because the weight of this betrayal is just too much to carry most days. I feel like I gave him the best version of myself, only for him to throw it back in my face because he was too scared to mention a simple surgery. I told my best friend Sarah that if Liam had just been a man and told me the truth from day one, we wouldn't be in this mess right now. He basically trapped me in a situation where I'm the only one facing the music while he hides behind a medical procedure he never even mentioned. It's so cowardly to use a vasectomy as a get-out-of-jail-free card when he's the one who set the stage for this disaster. Sarah is equally disgusted and keeps telling me that I dodged a bullet, but it doesn't feel like I dodged anything when I'm the one who's pregnant. The frustration of being unable to reach him is driving me to the brink of insanity, and I feel like I'm constantly on the verge of a panic attack. I try to go for walks to clear my head, but everywhere I go reminds me of him and the lies he told me while we walked these same streets. I see couples holding hands and I just want to scream at them to check if their partners are hiding major medical secrets from them. It's like I have a permanent cloud over my head that follows me from room to room in my parents' house. I've started looking into legal options, though I don't even know where to begin since he's made himself so unreachable. My parents are supportive, but I can see the stress in their eyes, and I hate that Liam is causing them pain too. I keep thinking about the what-ifs, but they always lead back to his failure to communicate like a functioning adult. If he had been honest, I would have known where I stood, and I wouldn't have been blindsided by a block notification in my hour of need. He took away my agency by keeping me in the dark about his fertility, and that is something I can never forgive him for. It's a form of control, really, keeping information to yourself so you can dictate the terms of the relationship without the other person knowing the truth. I feel like a fool for believing his honest man persona for so long, but I guess some people are just professional actors. My mom keeps saying that the truth will come out, but right now, the only truth I see is that I'm alone, and he's a coward. The local community is starting to hear whispers, and I've had a few awkward run-ins with mutual acquaintances who ask where Liam is. I have to stand there and explain that he abandoned me after a year because he hid a major medical fact, and the looks of pity I get are almost worse than the anger. I don't want pity, I want accountability, and for him to acknowledge the damage his secret has caused. It's like he's wiped me from his existence, and it's the most insulting thing anyone has ever done to me. I spent a year building a life with him, and he deleted me in 3 seconds because he didn't want to face a conversation. My anger is the only thing keeping me going right now, because if I stop being mad, I'll just fall apart completely. I've been trying to stay busy by organizing my things at my parents' house, but everything I touch has a memory of him attached to it. I found a hoodie of his at the bottom of a box and I almost burned it. But I decided to keep it as evidence of the man who lied to me. I want him to see what he's done, to see the girl he claimed to love reduced to living in her childhood bedroom because of his deception. He needs to understand that his choices have consequences that don't just disappear because he pressed a button on his phone. I'm not just a profile he can delete. I'm a person with feelings and a life that he helped shape and then tried to destroy. The injustice of it all is a constant throbbing ache in my chest that won't go away. My parents have been talking about maybe trying to contact his family, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for that level of drama yet. Part of me wants to blow up his whole world, and the other part just wants him to come crawling back and apologize for being such a jerk. I know he won't, though, because men like him don't apologize. They just hide and wait for the storm to pass. Well, I'm not a storm that's just going to pass. I'm a hurricane, and he's going to have to deal with the wreckage eventually. I'm tired of being the only one who's hurting while he gets to play the role of the wronged party. He's a liar by omission, period, and no amount of blocking is going to change that fundamental fact. I spent most of last night looking through our old photos, trying to see if there were signs I missed, but he looked so sincere in every single one. It's terrifying how someone can look you in the eye and tell you they love you while holding back a secret that could change everything. I feel like I'm mourning a person who never actually existed, which is a special kind of grief that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I'm trying to stay strong for the baby, but it's hard when the baby's father figure is a ghost who thinks he's too good for a conversation. Every day that passes without a word from him is another slap in the face, another reminder of how little I actually meant to him. I'm just waiting for the day when he finally has to answer for what he's done. Update 1 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, mess of your own making is the only way to describe this. You're living with your parents because you tried to pass off a pregnancy to a man who literally cannot produce children. Ops reply, I am the victim of a guy who lied by omission. Period. The mess was created the moment he decided to hide a major medical procedure from his long-term partner. If he had been honest, none of this would be happening. So stop trying to blame the person who is actually being real. Anonymous user 2 says, do your parents actually know the baby isn't his? Or are you letting them stay furious at Liam based on a lie? It sounds like you're manipulating them just as much as you claim he manipulated you. Ops reply, my parents know the truth that he is a liar who destroyed our future by keeping secrets. They're on my side because they value honesty and integrity, things that Liam clearly knows nothing about. I don't appreciate people questioning my family's support during a crisis. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and the silence from Liam has become so deafening that I finally decided I had to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't just sit in my room and let him win by ignoring me, so I reached out to Liam's sister, Rebecca. I didn't want to involve his family, truly, but his utter cowardice left me with absolutely no other choice if I wanted any kind of closure or justice. I found her on Facebook and sent her a long message explaining that I'm pregnant and that her brother is currently trying to gaslight me with this ridiculous vasectomy story just to get out of his responsibilities. I told her how much I had loved him and how devastating it was to be discarded like trash the moment things got real. Rebecca sounded incredibly confused when she finally replied, which honestly didn't surprise me at all. I'm sure he's been lying to her for years, too. She said she'd talk to him and try to get to the bottom of why he was being so difficult, which gave me a small glimmer of hope. I feel a bit better knowing the truth is finally getting out there, and that he can't just hide in his little bubble of lies forever. I am a firm believer that if you break a relationship through a total lack of communication, you should at least have the common decency to face the person you hurt. It's about basic human respect, something Liam seems to have completely forgotten in his rush to save himself from a situation he helped create. I'm not going to let him rewrite history just because he's afraid of a little accountability. I've started preparing a very detailed list of expenses for my prenatal care because I think it's only fair that he contributes to the costs. Since his secret about the vasectomy is the direct cause of this entire emotional and financial disaster, he should be the one to pay for the fallout. If he had been honest from the start, I would have made different choices, so in my mind, he is financially responsible for the path we are now on. I'm including everything from doctor's visits to the vitamins I have to take, and I'm going to make sure Rebecca sees the list so she knows I'm serious. He thinks he can just block me and leave me with all the bills, but he's in for a very rude awakening when he realizes I'm not going away. I deserve to be compensated for the trauma and the life changes he's forced upon me. My days are now filled with planning and documenting, which honestly feels a lot better than just crying in my childhood bedroom all day. I feel like I'm finally taking my power back from a man who tried to strip it away with a single text message and a gray icon. Every time I add an item to the expense list, I feel a sense of justice, like I'm finally making him pay for the year of lies he fed me. My parents are fully behind me on this, and my dad even offered to help me find a lawyer if Liam continues to be a deadbeat about the whole thing. It's amazing how quickly people show their true colors when things get tough. And Liam's colors are as yellow as they come. I'm just waiting for the moment he has to look at the numbers and realize he can't hide from the truth forever. I've also been talking to a few of our mutual friends, making sure they know the real reason we broke up so he doesn't try to spread some fake narrative. I tell them about the vasectomy secret and the immediate block, and they all seem genuinely shocked that he could be so calculated and cold. It's important to me that people know who they're dealing with, because a man who can do this to someone he loved is capable of anything. I'm not doing it out of spite. I'm doing it out of a sense of public service so no other woman falls for his honest guy act. He built a reputation on being a straight shooter, and I'm just here to provide the much-needed reality check. If his reputation suffers, that's just the natural consequence of his own deceptive actions. The prenatal appointments are starting to pick up, and every time I'm in that waiting room, I feel a fresh wave of resentment toward him. I see other women with their partners, and it reminds me that I should have had that too. If only Liam hadn't been a pathological secret keeper. I'm doing all of this alone because he chose to prioritize his privacy over our partnership, and it's a burden I shouldn't have to bear. The cost of the ultrasounds alone is enough to make anyone's head spin. And it's infuriating that he's probably out buying a new video game or something while I'm paying for medical care. He owes me this, at the very least, as a form of honesty tax for the way he handled our relationship. I'm going to make sure he pays every cent, even if I have to go through every member of his family to get to him. Rebecca messaged me again saying Liam is refusing to talk to her about me, which just proves how guilty he actually feels. If he were actually right, he'd be shouting it from the rooftops, but instead he's cowering in silence like the child he is. I told Rebecca that his silence is just confirming everything I suspected, and that I'm not going to stop until I get what's owed to me. She seems to be losing patience with him too, which is great because he needs to feel the pressure from all sides. He can't just ignore his way out of a pregnancy and a year of broken promises. The world doesn't work that way. I'm more determined than ever to hold his feet to the fire and make him acknowledge the damage he's caused. I've even started looking into how to file for child support early, or get some kind of legal injunction to force him to communicate. My lawyer friend says it's tricky because of the vasectomy claim, but I told her the claim is just a tactic to avoid pain. A piece of paper from 3 years ago doesn't change the fact that we were in a relationship and he lied to me every single day. The emotional fraud he committed is the real crime here, and I'm going to make sure the legal system sees it that way too. I'm not just fighting for money, I'm fighting for the principle that you can't just lie to your partner and expect no consequences. He's about to learn that I'm the wrong woman to try and play for a fool. I spent the evening with my mom, going over the list and making sure I didn't miss anything, and she's so proud of me for being so proactive. She says I have the heart of a lion and that Liam is going to regret the day he decided to be a coward. It feels so good to be validated by the person who knows me best, especially when the person I thought knew me best turned out to be a stranger. I'm sleeping a little better now, knowing that the wheels of justice are turning and that Liam's comfortable little life is about to get very complicated. He thought a block button was the end of the story, but he's just realized he only finished the first chapter. I'm the author now, and I'm going to make sure the ending is exactly what he deserves. Update 2 comments. Anonymous user 1 says a DNA test will end this quickly, Chloe. If he really has a vasectomy, the court isn't going to make him pay for a baby that isn't his. You're literally planning a legal battle you've already lost. Ops reply the DNA isn't the point. The emotional fraud he committed is. He spent a year lying about his fertility, and that deception is what led to this situation. I'm seeking damages for the breach of trust and the financial burden his secrets have placed on me. Anonymous user 2 says, yeah, his secret was his infertility. Yours was the other guy you actually slept with to get pregnant. The fact that you're calling him a gaslighter is the peak of delusion. Ops reply, I don't appreciate the tone. I'm dealing with a traumatic breakup and a pregnancy. Here, you weren't in our relationship, so you have no right to judge how I handle a man who lied to me for 12 months. His secret is the only reason we're even in this mess. Update 3. It's been 1 month since my last update, and I finally felt like I was making some real progress in this uphill battle for accountability. My parents, seeing how much I was struggling with the lack of closure, decided to take the lead and invited Liam over for a civilized discussion. They reached out through his sister and made it clear that we wanted to settle the financial support and the emotional fallout before things had to involve any formal mediation or lawyers. I was honestly so proud of myself for agreeing to this and taking the high road, even though every fiber of my being wanted to just scream at him. I wanted to show him that I am the adult in this situation, the one capable of having a difficult conversation without hiding behind a screen. I spent days preparing for this meeting, even going so far as to write out a speech so I wouldn't lose my cool when I saw his face. I wanted to talk about how honesty is the foundation of love, and how he hadn't just failed me, but he had failed the very idea of what a partnership should be. I had everyone on my side. My parents were ready to back me up, my cousins were sending me supportive texts, and even some mutual friends had checked in to say they were rooting for me. I felt like I was walking into that meeting with an entire army behind me, ready to finally hold him accountable for the deception of his vasectomy. It was going to be the moment where he finally had to look me in the eye and realize he couldn't just delete his mistakes. The morning of the meeting, I felt a strange sense of calm, like I was finally about to close this chapter and move on with my life as a stronger person. I dressed in something that made me feel confident but approachable, wanting to look like the woman he lost rather than the victim he created. My parents had set out some tea and snacks in the living room, trying to keep the atmosphere as civilized as possible, even though the tension was thick enough to cut. I kept rehearsing my lines in my head, making sure I hit all the points about his lack of transparency and the financial burden I was carrying. I was ready to be the bigger person and offer him a chance to make things right before I took it to the next level. I sat on the sofa, flanked by my mom and dad, feeling like a queen on her throne, waiting for a wayward subject to return. I had my list of expenses neatly printed out and placed on the coffee table, a physical manifestation of the debt he owed for his silence. Every time I looked at it, I felt a surge of righteous indignation that carried me through the nervous waiting. I knew that what I was doing was right, not just for me, but for the principle of the thing. Men shouldn't be allowed to hide major parts of themselves and then run away when the truth comes calling. I was the one who had stayed, the one who had faced the reality of the situation, and today he was going to have to do the same. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart skipped a beat, but I forced myself to stay composed and professional. I watched my dad go to the door, and for a second I wondered if Liam would actually show up or if he'd chickened out at the last minute. But then I heard his voice, that familiar low tone that used to make me feel safe but now just made my skin crawl. He walked into the living room looking remarkably calm, which honestly just annoyed me. He should have looked like he was about to face a firing squad. He didn't even look at the snacks or the tea. He just sat down in the armchair opposite us and waited for someone to speak. I took a deep breath and started my speech, laying out exactly how much his silence had hurt me and how his secret had destroyed the trust we had built. I talked about the pregnancy, the move, the financial strain, and the emotional toll of being blocked by the person I thought was my best friend. I told him that a real man would have been honest from the start and that his failure to communicate was a betrayal of the highest order. My parents nodded along, their faces stern and supportive, and for a moment, I really felt like I was winning. I was the hero of my own story, finally standing up to the villain who had tried to gaslight me with a medical procedure. I ended by pushing the expense list toward him and telling him that it was time to take responsibility for the situation his lack of honesty had created. I told him that I was willing to be reasonable, but that he had to acknowledge his part in this and start making things right financially and emotionally. I felt like I had delivered a knockout blow, and I waited for him to start stuttering an apology or at least try to defend his actions. The room was silent for a long moment, and I could feel my parents' pride radiating off them as they waited for his response. I had done it. I had finally confronted the man who had tried to vanish, and there was nowhere left for him to hide. Liam didn't say anything for what felt like an eternity. He just looked at the list on the table with a strange, blank expression that I couldn't quite read. I started to feel a bit impatient, wondering if he was even listening to me or if he was just trying to think of another lie to tell. I prompted him, asking if he had anything to say for himself or if he was going to continue his cowardly silence, even now. He finally looked up at me, and there was no guilt in his eyes, no shame, just a cold, hard clarity that made my stomach do a slow flip. He reached into his jacket pocket, and for a second I thought he was reaching for his wallet to start paying me right then and there. Instead of a wallet, he pulled out a thick manila folder and set it on the coffee table right on top of my expense list, which I thought was incredibly rude. He didn't open it immediately. He just let it sit there, a silent challenge to everything I had just said. I felt my anger bubbling up again. How dare he come into my parents' house and try to intimidate me with a folder after everything he's done? My dad cleared his throat and asked him what that was supposed to be, and Liam just leaned back in his chair looking more composed than ever. He told us that since we wanted a civilized discussion about honesty and responsibility, he thought it was only fair that he brought some context to the table. I scoffed and told him that no amount of context could justify his behavior, but he didn't even blink at my tone. He just tapped the folder and said that he had spent the last month making sure he had everything in order before he faced us. I could tell my parents were getting a bit uneasy, and honestly, I was starting to feel a tiny bit of dread in the back of my mind, though I pushed it down. I'm the one who was wronged here. I'm the one who's pregnant and alone, and nothing in that folder could change that. I told him to just get on with it so we could settle this and he could leave my life for good, and he just gave me a look that felt like a bucket of ice water. Update 3 comments. Anonymous user 1 says this is going to backfire so hard. You've backed him into a corner and he's clearly coming prepared with something more than just feelings. I can feel the disaster coming from a mile away. Ops reply, he's the one who hid the truth, not me. If he has information, he should have shared it a year ago instead of playing games. I'm not afraid of whatever is in that folder because my side of the story is the only one that matters. Anonymous user 2 says you really think you're the hero here. You're demanding money from a guy who's been telling you he's sterile since the day you dropped the news. This isn't high road, it's a high-speed chase toward a brick wall. Ups reply, I am the one left pregnant and alone because of his silence. I have every right to demand accountability for a man who tricked me into thinking he was a normal, fertile partner. If he didn't want this drama, he should have been an adult and communicated. Update 4. It's been 2 days since the meeting, and my entire world has officially collapsed into a million jagged pieces. Everything is ruined, and I'm sitting in my room writing this while the house is deathly silent in a way it's never been before. Liam showed up at that meeting, but he didn't come to talk or negotiate. He came with a folder full of cold, hard evidence that he used like a scalpel to dissect my life. In front of my entire family, my parents, who had been my biggest supporters, he laid out his medical records with a clinical detachment that was absolutely terrifying. He proved with official hospital stamps and signatures that he had the vasectomy done in 2018, years before I even knew he existed. He didn't stop there. He went on to show 3 different follow-up tests he'd had over the years to ensure the procedure was still effective. The most devastating part was the last report, dated just 6 months ago, showing a 0 sperm count, totally sterile, no exceptions. My father, who had been ready to kick Liam out of the house 10 minutes earlier, went completely pale as he looked through the papers. He asked Liam, almost in a whisper, why he hadn't just told me this from the beginning of our relationship. Liam didn't even look at me. He just looked my father in the eye and said the most cruel thing I've ever heard. Because I wanted to see if she was the kind of person who would try to pin someone else's child on me if the opportunity arose. I guess I got my answer, he said, his voice completely flat. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever experienced, and I felt like I was shrinking into the sofa cushions. My parents didn't look at Liam anymore. They turned and looked at me, and the expression on their faces was like I was a total stranger they just met on the street. It wasn't anger yet. It was a profound, bone-deep disappointment that felt 1,000 times worse than being yelled at. They asked me right there in front of him who the father of the baby actually was. I couldn't even process the question because I was so overwhelmed by the sheer malice of Liam testing me like that for an entire year. I started screaming, my voice cracking as I told him he was a monster for manipulating a situation just to see me fail. I yelled about how unfair it was that he kept a secret that big just to use it as a trap later on, and how he was the one who destroyed our future with his experiment. I was hysterical, pointing at the medical records and saying that his lack of communication was still the primary reason for all of this drama. But no matter how loud I got, nobody was listening to me anymore. They were all just staring at the floor or at the papers. Liam eventually just stood up, took his folder back, and walked out of the house without saying another word to me, not even a goodbye. My parents didn't even try to stop him. They just let him go, and then they turned their focus back to me with a coldness that I've never felt in my life. They told me that I had made them look like fools in front of a man they had respected and that they couldn't believe I would try to pull a stunt like this. Now, they won't even speak to me unless it's absolutely necessary. And the tension in the house is so thick I can barely breathe. I'm being treated like a pariah in my own home just because I reacted to a situation that Liam had spent years engineering. It's so incredibly unfair that he gets to walk away as the winner when he's the one who spent a year being a deceptive, calculating jerk. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a test subject, and now I'm the one who has to deal with the fallout of his twisted little game. My family is acting like I'm the one who lied, but I was just living my life while he was busy collecting evidence to use against me. I feel like I've been framed for a crime I didn't even know I was committing, all because a man was too insecure to just be honest from the start. I'm pregnant, I'm alone, and now my own parents look at me with disgust, and it's all Liam's fault. I've tried talking to my mom, but she just walks out of the room the moment I start to explain my side of things again. She keeps saying that the records don't lie, but she's missing the point that the person who held the records did lie by omission. It's a total collapse of my support system, and I don't know what I'm going to do when the baby actually gets here. I'm being punished for his lack of transparency, and it's the most bitter pill I've ever had to swallow. Everyone is so focused on the biology that they're completely ignoring the psychological warfare Liam waged on me for 12 months. I am the victim here, no matter what a piece of paper from 2018 says. The irony of him talking about honesty while he was hiding a whole medical history is just too much to bear. He's a hypocrite of the highest order, but because he has a folder of papers, he gets to be the hero of the story. I'm left to figure out my next move in a world that has suddenly turned its back on me because I didn't pass a test I never agreed to take. I still haven't told my parents who the other guy might be because, honestly, that's not the issue. The issue is Liam's cruelty. He's gone for good, and he took my reputation and my family's respect with him, leaving me with nothing but questions and a growing stomach. I spent all night crying. Not because I'm sorry for what happened, but because I'm so angry that the world is this unfair. I did everything I was supposed to do in a relationship. I was present, I was loving, and I was planning a future, and it all meant nothing. Because he was waiting for a chance to catch me. It's a level of premeditated malice that I can't even fathom, and yet I'm the one being labeled as the villain. I'm going to have to find a way to move forward, but right now I just feel like I'm drowning in the consequences of someone else's sick game. Liam might have his 0 sperm count, but he also has a 0 for a heart, and I hope he's happy in his lonely, honest little world.